And welcome back to part 4 of Lovers, Friends, and Enemies, the astrology of Congressman Matt Gaetz and Joule Greenberg. All right, so I brought this slide back because I want to revisit this because a lot of the stuff that's being activated is being activated in the month of May, which is the month that we are releasing this particular video. So I wanted to make sure we got this in here so we could watch this play out in live time. Now, a couple things to remember with public figures and celebrities, we are limited in the information we receive because we're only able to glean information from what hits headlines or is given to the public, right? I mean, unless you're a super sleuth detective and you go check public records, and even then you're still dealing with public records as opposed to, things that are happening in real time in real life for these people. So with some of these dates, we may not see now, but we may be able to go back later when more information comes out and check these timelines to see what happened on these dates. So if you don't see anything significant or powerful that you can put your finger on, don't be alarmed. It just means that we're not necessarily seeing it. And to give you an example of what I'm talking about, for Matt Gaetz on between April 14th and 18th, right? We knew these were critical days for him. And so we would have expected to see something. And, when you go to Google it, there's so much wall-to-wall coverage from everybody about these two characters and this nonsense that it's very hard to sort through that mountain of headlines and information to pinpoint like specific dates, right? Because often the articles are coming out after something has happened or it's a regurgitation of something that happened weeks earlier. In any event, I couldn't really find anything obvious, but what I did find was notable. So on April 16th, I believe it was, Matt Gaetz reappeared for a military committee hearing, some type of military arms or budget committee hearing that he's still on the committee, which is in and of itself a statement. Anyway, this was after having been off the radar and out of sight for more than a few days while this scandal broke open. So Matt Gaetz pretty much disappeared off the radar and from public view for more than a few days. And when he finally resurfaced, it was about April 16th at this committee hearing or meeting. And apparently, the reporter noted that Matt Gaetz looked very relaxed. Now, this doesn't seem like a big thing, but remember, context is everything. In the context of the situation he's embroiled in right now, anybody looking very relaxed in the middle of all this after resurfacing after a few days of being invisible means one of two things. Either you've found something that you think is like your get out of jail free card, or, to hold over somebody else to get you that get out of jail free card, or you're on a whole lot of sedatives. Or both, which could be the case for Mr. Gaetz. So I thought that was notable. We won't know actually what this was about until later when all this comes out in the wash. We've got a better, more clear timeline. But this is just to illustrate that sometimes things are happening that we can't see because we're limited in the information that we have access to when it comes to somebody else's life. All right, so things to watch this month with these two characters. So the first thing I want to touch on is we've got an eclipse and a Saturn station retrograde happening right on top of each other. Now, Saturn station retrograde is not, in terms of the monthly horoscope, is not that, it's not that big a singular player. Like Saturn retrograde, station retrograde with the eclipse in the monthly horoscope is flavoring or modifying how we're reading that eclipse. In their composites and their personal charts, that's another story, right? So the Saturn station retrograde for these two, it will be conjuncting Joule Greenberg's sun, which sets off his sun-Saturn square. So Joule Greenberg is about to get a whole lot of lessons in humility and also possibly and more likely a formal and official either denial, refusal, rejection, or sentencing. So something that's very, this is, you're going to take your medicine now kind of experience is what's going to happen around the 23rd and the 26th where this eclipse is occurring, but specifically that Saturn station. Now, also to remember that, I don't have my pen, that Joule and Matt have a sun-sun square. So not only does this create a lot of rivalry between the two, right? So there's a lot of competition and jockeying for dominance between them. because that's the nature of a sun-sun square, especially in male charts, with the Saturn station retrograde conjuncting Joel's sun and simultaneously squaring Matt's sun. Matt can expect to get mud splattered on him from this. So whatever's going now with Joel is absolutely going to handicap Matt at the knees at the same time. So Matt's not walking away from this. This is going to sink Matt with Joel like an anchor, right? Anchor? Wrapped around his ankles. That's what I was getting confused. Like a ship anchor wrapped around his ankles. Sorry. So that's what we're looking at around the 23rd. So let's watch the headlines for the dates, the 22nd, the 23rd, and all the way out to the 27th and 28th, just after the eclipse, because these two are happening so close together, the Saturn station and the eclipse, that whole time period I would keep an eye on, but especially the days between the 23rd and the 26th. Now, let's look at the eclipse. So the eclipse is occurring at 5 Sag around the 26th. I don't have the date written in front of me. Do I have the date written down? I know, such an astrologer, right? Yes, 26th. Now, this eclipse, now here's what's interesting, and I'm a little concerned about this. This eclipse will conjunct the composite Jupiter between their charts. Now, typically when you've got a Jupiter activation in a composite chart, it means that something very lucky or some type of opportunity is landing for the partners, the relationship, right? So there's something very lucky or protective that's going to occur that benefits both of them as their relationship goes, not individually, but as a unit, as partners. And you know, as these things happen, nobody wants to see them get a lucky break. Nobody wants to see them get a lucky break. Well, I mean, unless you're one of these people that's guilty of the same kind of nonsense they are, at which point you probably identify with them, and then you would want them to get a lucky break. But for the rest of us, no, we don't want them to get a lucky break. So that's a little distressing to see this happen. But let's see what else is going on. Now, this eclipse on the composite Jupiter will sextile Matt's Mars while opposing his Mercury. So there's Mercury, Mars, Jupiter in conjunction with this Jupiter eclipse, right? So with Matt, what we can expect is some type of strategic action or information or critical detail that may trip up anyone who is confronting him. So that will be interesting to see how that plays out. I would look for critical details or information, strategic things that will occur that will illuminate this Jupiter and give them the protective opportunity or stroke of luck that this eclipse is suggesting. Now, this Jupiter-ruled eclipse, the 5 Sagittarius eclipse, conjuncting the composite Jupiter, will also be sitting for Joel on the midpoint of his Pluto and his Jupiter-Neptune. So with Joel, what I would expect with this composite Jupiter activation and the eclipse is that there is some type of connection or association or assistance coming from big money, the underworld, and or shady corporate interests. So there is somebody whose personal assets are exposed because of not Matt but Joel, who will step in. This is my theory. Who will step in and offer some type of assistance or protection from behind the scenes to help possibly get Joel and Matt by association a leg up and hopefully out of the situation because they are exposed as a result of Joel Greenberg. I don't know what that is. So it will be interesting to see what hits the headlines around this time. I may miss it, so if it comes up and you guys see it, please put it in the comments below so we can all kind of follow along. Because I've got so much stuff I'm trying to keep track of these days. I'm overwhelmed. All right, so I don't have enough hours in the day to read the news and get a decent night's sleep. All right, now the final thing I just want to say about this chart is that we had a Pluto station retrograde near a full moon in Scorpio on April 26th. So this just passed at the end of April. Now, this Pluto station retrograde is very, very important, and this Pluto station this Pluto station retrograde will not hit its full effect or impact until October. So this, whatever this did or set off, whatever this ignited, we're going to see blossom into full view, full glorious, undeniable view come October for these two characters. And the reason I say that is because this Pluto station squares their composite Pluto, which is already retrograde. Now, again, we don't have houses because we don't have the time of birth for either of them or one of them. Oh, right. We don't have the time of birth for Matt, so we're unable to get houses for this. But oh, you know what? We do have a time of birth for Matt. No. Joule? No. Oh, sorry. Whew, long day. We have a rectified time for Matt, so even that's not an accurate time because we're guessing at what the time is, and we definitely don't have any kind of time for Joule because I didn't try to rectify his time of birth. So if we use the rectified time of birth for Matt Gaetz, we do have houses for him, and I'm going to say that this is going to sit in Matt's 3rd or 4th house. So documents, communications, and or things inside the home or the residence will come into effect as part of this Pluto blossoming at around October. Alrighty, so I am a huge fan of just doing basic synastry or cross chart comparisons. Composite charts are nice, all these things are fun, but at the end of the day, we've always got to come back to our foundations or our basics, right? Because it's like anything else. If the foundations aren't set up correctly, everything you build after that is at best, icing that tastes terrible on a cake, right? So it looks good, but there's nothing there, and certainly nothing you want to keep up with. So in this chart, what we're looking at are the ways in which Joule and Matt would have sympathy or sympathetic attraction to each other, meaning how they would like each other, right? So when you're looking at a chart, some things that you might see, for example, right, are Matt Gaetz's sun here trines Joule Greenberg's Venus. So the Sun-Venus trine like that indicates an ease of, well, affection and friendliness. There's a liking of similar things. Venus supports the Sun's ambitions and goals. So, you know, the things that Matt believes in or stands for or enjoys and finds pleasure in, it gives him a sense of purpose and identity. Joule would support and appreciate and probably encourage because of that Venus trine Sun aspect. Now, it's important to note also that with that said, right, these two carry a Sun-Sun square. Now, so Sun-Sun squares can be problematic in relationships depending on what else is going on in the chart. And especially in male charts, anytime you have a Sun-Sun square, you're going to get like Olympic level competition. So there's always this sense of competitiveness or spurring each other on or trying to outdo each other. There's a lot of ego combat that happens with this aspect. Now, if you have nice, happy, supportive aspects like these two do, you're going to get guys or women, you know, you're going to get people who enjoy the competitive sport with each other, right? They can't resist the game of trying to outdo one another. If there are less positive aspects between the chart or some significantly hard, aggressive aspects, then what you're going to get are two people who literally can't stand each other. And everything the other one does is seen as a threat to their own identity, ergo and therefore they have to be, you know, put in their place, you know, or one-upmanship kind of games. So the Sun, even these two have lots of supportive aspects, which is good. But again, at the root of it, it's always going to be this competitive quality between the two of them that will never go away. So that's interesting, and that's something to watch out for. Because again, how that sun-sun square interacts in the real world has a lot to do with the other aspects in the chart, and also their relationship to each other in the real world. Are they employer-employee? Are they parent-child? Are they siblings? Are they roommates? All of these things are going to flavor and factor into how that sun-sun square is able to express itself, either in a positive or a negative manner, or constructive or destructive manner, as it were. Okay. Now, their moons. Your moon has a lot to do with how emotionally sympathetic you are. You really want good moon aspects if you can get them. I have a friend, we have a sun-moon conjunction across the charts. I've known him for entirely too long, so if I tell you, it will be clear exactly how old I am, which is older than original sin. But so we've known each other more than a few decades, and we have a very comfortable relationship with each other. We don't necessarily have a lot in common. Honestly, we don't. But we're very comfortable with each other because that's what a sun-moon conjunction will do in a chart. So you want good moon aspects if you can find it, because the moon is your safe space. A well-supported moon in a relationship or across charts always indicates a relationship where the person can come back to and feel safe, right? So these two, sorry, I'll use this one. So this is Joule Greenworks' moon in Pisces, and again, we don't have a time of birth for him, so that moon is forward or backward by a few degrees, depending on the time of birth, right? And here is Matt Gaetz' moon, which we believe to be about 16, with Jupiter near it at 3. So these two have very sympathetic moons, and the most important thing here is because Jupiter, there we go, because Jupiter is involved, Jupiter makes this even more more telling. So when you have Jupiter aspects between charts, one of the big challenges with the Jupiter aspect is that the Jupiter person is always beneficially disposed or beneficiently disposed to the other person whose planet is sitting on that Jupiter. I have seen it and experienced it myself. When someone is sitting in my Jupiter, I tend to give them a lot more leeway and a lot more rope than would be seen as wise. Now, I'm also the generation as a Jupiter-Neptune opposition, so my Neptune's involved in that as well. But Jupiter will always be beneficiently disposed to you for better or worse. So if it's your Jupiter, you might want to be a little bit more protective and discriminating about who you share your Jupiter with. Okay, so with that said, with Matty Boy's Jupiter here, all right, somewhere near that moon. Remember, we don't know where that moon is. That moon may be closer to Jupiter than it is Matt's moon, but it's close enough. So with that moon Jupiter, Matt is always going to be more beneficiently disposed towards Joule than the other way around necessarily, right? So Joule's Jupiter, remember, he's got that Jupiter-Neptune conjunction down here in Capricorn. And Joule's Jupiter doesn't really do anything happy in Matt's chart, because if you look, Matt carries that Venus-Mars opposition, right? And look at that. Joule's Jupiter with his Neptune is setting up a T-square to that Venus-Mars. Now, we discussed that later in another section of the video, but just be aware that when it comes to which one is more likely to extend confidence, faith, and a willingness to believe that they deserve a little extra rope or leeway and less suspicion, it's going to be Matt trusting Joule more than the other way around. And that will likely be Matt's Achilles heel. And certainly it has proven to be so far. This is what we are definitely seeing playing out. Matt's lack of discretion, I'm sure, was built partially, aside from being built on his stupidity, Jesus, I'm sure the other part of that was built on his trust in Joule to, not be a screw up, I guess, or throw him under the bus. So there's that. Anyway, so they've got a nice sympathetic, moon thing going on, which makes it very easy for them to spend time with each other. And with that Sun-Venus trine also, they're gonna feel very comfortable with each other, and they're gonna feel like this is somebody who really understands me, right? And they would both say this back and forth either way. So other things is we've got a Sun-Saturn trine. Hang on, let me try and find it. Yes, here. Right. So we've got Joule's Sun trining Matt's Saturn. Okay. And with that Sun-Saturn trine, what you're going to get is a stabilizing influence. So in a lot of ways, Matt would have provided some stability or structure for Joule and Joule's goals. I'm not completely sure how that works between those two, but that is something worth looking at the next time we get an opportunity to look at their relationship, as you know, when the dust finally settles on all of this. So when you have somebody whose Saturn trines your Sun, what you're also going to find is somebody who feels very reliable to you, someone who has the potential to help you build towards your goals, right? So there's almost and usually a sense of mentorship that comes with a Sun-Saturn from the Saturn person. So if your Saturn is on my Sun, I might feel that you have the ability to be a very good mentor for me, or we may automatically fall into the role of teacher-student, where you are my teacher because it's your Saturn on my Sun. And this is what we're seeing with these two. So we can certainly see why these two would be attracted to each other in a platonic friendship sort of way. I mean, there's lots of positive things here that would make a relationship or a friendship between them seem very appealing to both of them. Now, was it fate or was it destiny that these two meet each other? Here's something interesting between these charts. If you look, right, we've got Matt's, where's Matt? Matt's over here, and this is Joule. So we have Joule's Venus conjuncting Matt's South Node. These two have, if you believe in past lives, these two have a past life connection. They've been through this before. They had a relationship before. And if you look, Joule's North Node is conjuncting Matt's Mercury. So in terms of past life connections, these two have had a past life before. And with this particular set of aspects, Mercury North Node, Venus South Node, I would say that these two were siblings in a past life. They were actually brothers, or brother-sister, or sister-sister, but they were siblings in a past life. So there's a strong sense of family connection between the two of them. And I'm sure they may at some point have said this about themselves, about their relationship themselves, that they feel like brothers, or that this is my brother from another mother kind of thing. Venus South Node conjunctions are always going to give you past life relationships. So this is someone that you have had a significant intimate relationship with. Now, intimate means anything from platonic to familial to erotic. It's not just physically intimate in terms of sex. So get your mind out of the gutter, you dirty birds. All right, now here we have Mercury in the North Node, which means that Mercury conjunct the North Node, right? So, and also too, remember, Joule has Uranus sitting in his South Node. So in this lifetime, with that Mercury North Node conjunction pulling in the South Node in Uranus for Joule, Matt, in many ways, this relationship with Matt was intended to be a catalyst or a breaker, a stone breaker. So this is supposed to interrupt a pattern that Joule is karmically or spiritually involved in. And that's an intriguing thought. So this would suggest that the whole purpose of these two coming together in this lifetime, and Matt's purpose for being involved in this relationship again with Joule, may have to do with actually rescuing Joule from old karmic patterns, because Matt now becomes the disruptor, right? The herald, the announcer, the crow at dawn, or the rooster at dawn, the crowing. So because the Mercury in North Node, the North Node is always where we're trying to go. So Matt's Mercury conjuncting Joule's North Node indicates that for whatever reason, Matt is functioning as a messenger or an intermediary to activate the north node in Joel's chart, the dharma, the direction Joel needs to go to evolve and get off the karmic wheel, right? And stop repeating the same lifetime over and over and over again, which also suggests that Joel is compulsively repeating his lifetimes over and over and over again. Joel, on a spiritual level, what this may be telling us is that Joel may be on his own like karmic Groundhog Day. And this relationship with Matt in this lifetime is meant to disrupt that and break him free. And the reason I say break him free is because, remember, Joel's south node is conjunct Uranus. So Matt's Mercury is involved with that Uranus in the south node and the north node. And Uranus is also the disruptor, the thing that breaks up patterns, right? The thing that liberates us, the shock, the explosion, the ripping away. So with that Uranus south node and north node involvement in Joel's chart, with Matt's Mercury, this whole trip between the two of them may have been about facilitating shocking, sudden liberation from old karmic patterns that have been repeated lifetime after lifetime after lifetime on Joel's part. That's pretty interesting, and that would imply a very compulsive, almost scripted pattern of behavior for Joel from very early on in his life, and certainly accelerated once he made the acquaintance of Matt and this relationship got reignited. Now, does that mean that Joel served any particular karmic purpose with Matt? Does Joel serve the same purpose and function in Matt's spiritual evolution? And the answer is not necessarily. Remember, the only aspect we have between these two is Joel's Venus falling in Matt's south node. So there's nothing in this relationship that moves Matt forward. If anything, it has the potential to keep Matt stuck at whatever evolutionary level he's at, or drag him back to the past. But there's nothing in the nature of this relationship that liberates Matt from his dharma in this lifetime. So apparently whatever needs to happen with Matt to get him to grow and evolve and move off of these old patterns is going to be the job of somebody else being the catalyst for that in his life. So that's pretty interesting if you look at it like that. So there's your north node across charts with these two. And that is it. This is part 4 of 7, and we have reached the end because I don't want to overwhelm you guys with too much information in a video. Hope you enjoyed this, and if you like it, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you get notified when the next video in this series comes up. All right, and watch those dates. Let's see what happens this month.